Caroline Cordery and Caroline Fowler. I will be brief in terms of presentation, so this will leave a space to the other presentations and, of course, to any Q&A session. So the first part is really about the common thinking that publishing for a journal in a specific field like accounting history means also publishing for a community and having to demonstrate to be part of that specific community. This means that once we have got a sort of topic in accounting history, and for instance, we target, in my case, I'm a very opportunistic accounting history, we need first of all to get acquainted with the journal, with the aim and scope of the journal, and with the main stats regarding the journal, in order to address in the best way our own research and to give it the best chances, of course, for publication, since there is still the mantra publish or perish. The second part of this presentation will be about also getting our head around accounting history and the process of publishing in the accounting history journal. As I said, publishing for a specific journal within a discipline like accounting history means knowing at least the aim and scope of the journal. Our journal is a peer-reviewed international journal. It collects contributions in the English language, and it is well known for its interdisciplinarity and for the view that accounting is also a social phenomena, and therefore it needs to be contextualized within organizations, within its technicalities, and also within the social and environmental context. This journal is owned 50% by AFANS, that is the Australia and New Zealand Accounting and Finance Association, and for the 50% by SIG publication. It was in the ABDC 2022. We are awaiting for the results of 2025. It is classified as an A journal. However, in the ABS ranking, it is still a 2-star journal, like the other 2 journals that are present today for this specific roundtable. Now, this is just to show you some statistics. As I said, publishing for a journal within a discipline means also getting our head around that journal and which chances that journal, how much that journal actually matches our own best interest in publication. As you can see, the rejection rate is quite high, in a sense that it is around 70%, and the time to first decision and to final decision is also quite long. This length of time is expected to be used to improve the quality of the paper, and especially for papers that are still a bit immature, to let them grow within the journal and within the time frame and the framing of the journal in itself. So we have a flexible budget in terms of pages to be published. In 2024, we reached the 700 pages published, and in September last year, we were already at 530 pages. Now, as I said, we are not particularly favored in terms of the ABS ranking, and I'm having a look at our UK colleagues here, but we are definitely favored in terms of ABDC ranking. That is the ranking that is currently about journals adopted in Australia. Here I've provided like a little table for some comparison, taking into account that since it is an interdisciplinary journal, our closest comparison is with the business history, the Journal of Business History, that runs in the ABS much higher with respect to accounting history. Now, to get to know who we are, okay, we need to know also our own community and who is operating within the journal in itself. Our long-standing associate editor is Nick Davis, and our other two associate editors are Umesh Sharma and Rob Voslamber. All the three associate editors are from Australia and New Zealand. We have got also an editorial advisory panel, and as you can see, it is formed by very well-renowned scholars around the world. As you can see from here, the representation in our editorial board is quite wide, internationally wide, despite the fact that Accounting History is a journal owned by AFANS, so Australia and New Zealand. And as you can see, we have got a great presence not only of UK affiliated people, but also of Italian affiliated people, and then US, followed by Spain and other European countries. We don't have a high representation, unfortunately, of the Far East Asia or South America, and this would be like a part of our strategy to enrich the contributions of accounting history also towards these countries. Now, accounting history has got a holistic view, and it tends also to study the past in order to speak to the present and the future. And I quoted here an article of Carnegie and Napier, but also the most recent editorial from co-authored by Karen as well on one of the conferences, Accounting History International conferences that she convened in Portsmouth, also outlines this strict connection between the past and the present. What does that mean? This means that it has got an intellectual value and it has got links with the technical practice, but it should have, or the contribution should also show some impact of accounting and accounting change in the present and for the future. So it has got intellectual value, but it also allows us to have a sort of lesson from the past that can contribute to change the future, and especially put into much more relevance the role of accounting in changing and shaping our own future. As I said, it is an interdisciplinary journal, therefore, we tend to share some topics, but also some methodologies with business history and economic history. And when we are publishing for the accounting history community, we need to take into account some simple rules. This is, in my view, it is connected to whoever is publishing in the field of accounting history independently from the journal. So we need to be able to choose the topic, to choose the time period, the location, to identify, if necessary, a suitable theory, and then to follow up with the method and the appropriate sources, being aware of the limitations that a study in accounting history may bring with it. In terms of topics, there are different kind of classification of potential topics. Here I have reported a classification of contributions by Fowler and Keeper 2016. There is a long history in terms of papers that are proposing classifications of topics. As you can see, there has been a sort of switch between the 90s and the 2000s, whereas still strong are the topics that look at accounting history from an institutional perspective, and also quite strong are going the accounting history studies that are concerning the public sector. Public sector as intended in a very large connotation of potential entities. In terms of time period, as you can see here, one of the main questions is, what is considered as history in accounting. We have a lot of desk rejections regarding papers that are not that do not actually have a historical sort of flavor. So is 15 to 20 years ago considered a history? As a rule of thumb, we consider history and we want like the time frame to stop at least 20 years ago, pre-2006 as the latest ending point of any research in accounting history, at least for the journal. As you can see from here, still a table from the publication of Fowler and Keeper 2016. This is still current. Most of the accounting history studies are about the 20th and the 19th century. And unfortunately, there is still the need to go a bit deeper on less recent times and less modern history. The periodization of an article is important. It should be declared. And if an event is not developing longitudinally into history, some examples should be brought and some specific time or dates should be involved into the paper and explicitly declared. We have got also some major spread of articles. As you can see here, the countries in the European Union, North America, and some in Oceania are still the most targeted one, whereas we have a dearth of contributions coming from Africa, for instance, from the Far East Asia, from the Middle East or South America. In terms of the entities that can be studied in accounting history, there is a wide variety, from private to public, but also including networks, associations, accounting profession, family homes, charities, educational institutions, and so on. So we go now into the framing in terms of the theory. Now, we recognize, of course, that there can be some contributions that are more inclined to be towards the traditional history, narrative history. Even in that case, what this specific journal requires is to identify the assumptions of the authors and the conceptual framing in which the authors intend to operate and to study the past. Even if they do not choose a specific theory or they do not choose to contribute to a specific theoretical framework. Whenever a theoretical framework is chosen, and maybe we are going into the interpretative or critical history, it is very important that this framework is developed throughout the findings and it is developed or reconnected within the discussion and conclusion of the paper. In terms of sources of accounting history, there can be many sources, and actually digitalization makes a lot of difference in terms of finding the right sources and specifically the primary documents or oral history, regulation, legislation at hand, making the job far easier sometimes for the researcher, but bearing in mind that digitization of archives, for instance, can have some limitations in itself. And there is an entire special issue of accounting history that has been developed on digitalization, and one of the guest editors is here with us. It is Alan Samser. And so like potentially any shortcomings, questions can come to him. Now, key limitations to be aware of when publishing in the accounting history field. As Previtz, Parker, and Kaufman in 1990 wrote, historical inquiry be it narrative or interpretational, is conditional. Conditional to the conceptual framing and to the biases that any researcher brings into that. There are also some further biases that are coming from the sources, even the primary sources, because the sources that are surviving, often they are demonstrating or they are acknowledging the power of certain races, classes, gender, and so on. So there are these key limitations that we need to be aware of, and we need to acknowledge within a contribution in order to work around and still demonstrate the rigor of the work that has been done. When getting our head around accounting history provides a lot of resources for any author who wants or who targets accounting history as its own publishing outlet. Identifying the closer or closest editor's choice collection may help authors to reconnect with the debates that are coming through the journal. Also, if there is a specific special issue in which authors are interested in, please make a connection with the guest editors. Another great link for publishing into the journal is represented by the main outlet in which accounting history is debated. For the journal specifically, it is the Accounting History International Conference, that is a biennial one, the specific workshop that are organized by the Special Interest Group of Accounting History of AFANS. They are run twice a year, once in person at the AFANS conference, generally in July, and the other one online in December. Plus, there are a lot of ad hoc workshops that the journal is happy to run in case there is any need that is expressed. The latest one were expressed by Japan and France, and the next one that is upcoming will be in Spain. So we are very open to try to mentor authors and potential contributions towards the end line, that is in the end the publication. This is just a snapshot of what you will find in the main homepage of Accounting History in terms of resources that you can access to. And there are like article awards, editor's choice collections, the list of the most recent articles in Publish With Us, the special issues that are announced, and any upcoming events. Now, just as a final reminder, if you're interested in the upcoming special issues, whose paper submissions has already been closed, are related to accounting for death, historical accounting for enterprise and society in Africa, accounting for arts, culture, and heritage in historical perspectives, coming from the most recent, the last Accounting History International Conference, and the Bridging National Traditions. There are two new special issues, if you're interested in, one about totalitarian regimes in historical perspectives, and the other one about women and accounting's past. They are still open for submission, so please have a look into those. The Editor's Choice Collection, the last one that we have updated, is about SDGs in accounting and accounting history, origins, development, relevance, and practice, that again connects the past, so works in accounting history with the most recent challenges of the modern age. In terms of understanding the process, I said beforehand that when publishing in this journal, you need to take into account a certain range of time, okay? So this time mainly comes from bringing literally the paper to a level, quality level that is publishable. This means a lot of back and forth between the authors and the reviewers whenever the paper is not desk rejected. The potential outcomes of the reviews are reject if it is not just that's rejected, it can be still be rejected throughout the review process. That is a double-blind peer review process. Major revision, revise and resubmit. Minor revision, in that case, the paper doesn't go back to the reviewers, but it can be subjected to conditional acceptance. Why conditional acceptance? Because, first of all, it has to respect the editorial style guidelines of the journal. We do not have the resources to run or to have SAGE running independently a copy editing, a full copy editing of the papers that are submitted, that are coming from a lot of countries whose English is not the mother tongue. Therefore, there is the need for copy editing. Copy editing then brings to proof editing, that is a stage in which the publishing editor of SAGE is actually involved. And after subscription of the proofs, then the paper can pass on online first and be assigned a DOI. Red flags when you can have a major revision or a revise and resubmit. Red flags may relate to methodology, to the organization of the paper in itself. So reading a paper that has already been published in accounting history is helpful, in terms at least to see the structure and see how it is organized. Lack of contribution, not enough. Language. And like very thin literature review for the positioning of the paper in itself. Other issues generally can be fixed between the revise and resubmit and the minor revision. As I said, in terms of time of publications, you need also to consider that this journal publishes 4 issues a year. Of these 4 issues, 1 or 2 can be special issues. It depends, but in terms of process time, the acceptance to online first. So the actual DOI identification depends. It depends on the timing that is in part imposed by SAGE Publications, in part by how authors are quick to fix the editorial style guidelines. It can be several months. Okay, and this needs to be taken into account if you are targeting this journal. Upcoming events to which you are all invited: the 24th Accounting History Symposium that will be held on the 4th of July in connection with the AFANS conference, within which there is a stream dedicated to accounting history, July 5th and 7th in Melbourne, Australia, together with the Grand Prix, and the 13th Accounting History and Emerging Scholar Colloquium straight after, from July the 8th to the 11th, 2026, in Wollongong, by train or by flight from Melbourne. It is about accounting through the ages, lesson for modern challenges, and Mona, who is one of the conference conveners, is also here with us to invite us to Wollongong. And here, like I show you, the main conference submission page of AFANS is still open till the 15th of February, and the 13th Accounting History International Conference till the 13th of February 2026, the paper submission line. And with this, I just summarized the main instances, and I leave back to Karen the stage. Thank you for the time.
Okay, so thank you, Karen. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to be part of this seminar, clearly. And first of all, I would like to thank Karen for organizing this event and for the invitation. I will be very brief in order to leave time to colleagues who have broadened experience in accounting history and who can certainly contribute to this debate far better than I can. So please, therefore, consider my intervention as a set of scattered reflection on topics that could be of interest for the accounting historian journals. I would like to start with the 20th century. in my view, the second half of the 20th century is still a period that remains largely unexplored. And this situation can probably be explained by two main factors. The first is cultural and educational. Because when I was at school, history courses typically ended with the Second World War. And as a consequence, we are not naturally encouraged to think of what follows as history in the strict sense. The second factor may be psychological. We can easily accept that our grandparents lived through history. It is much harder to acknowledge that our parents are themselves part of it. But if we also consider that there are relatively few young scholars working in accounting history, these elements may help explain why there is still a delay in exploring this period. Nevertheless, it's an extremely rich era, characterized by profound events and technological transformation, the Cold War, the advent of the computer, and many other structural changes in society. With specific reference to accounting, this period could be described as the era of standards, and also has a phase marked by the growth and consolidation of the profession, which deeply contributed to shaping accounting as we know it today. As a second aspect I would like to emphasize is recurrence. If it's true that history tends to repeat itself, then it may be worthwhile to revisit past wars and world wars, and to analyze more deeply how the emergence of new communication technologies, such as the telegraph, shaped society and were used as instrument of power. Similarly, during the mercantilism period, large companies, such as the East India companies, exercised control and influence on a global scale. And these historical dynamics resonate strongly with contemporary developments. The third factor I would like to consider is geographical. As also it was shown before, at international level, accounting history research has so far been largely concentrated on a limited number of traditional contexts, and regions such as South America, Africa, and Asia still represent underexplored areas that deserve much deeper investigation. Finally, I would like to briefly address the advent of artificial intelligence and digitalization. Artificial intelligence undoubtedly offers significant opportunities because when used correctly, it represents an extraordinary tool for analyzing digital archives and opening new research possibilities for accounting historians. At the same time, however, it also presents critical issues. In my role as an associate editor, I encountered papers in which there is a clear misuse of artificial intelligence, not only for improving language or style, but for generating entire section or even wallpapers. And so it's clearly that the results are often counterproductive and raise serious methodological and ethical concerns. So with this, I conclude my brief reflection. I thank you very much, you for the attention and Karen for this opportunity, and I give the stage to Karen.
Thank you very much, Carmelo. And the editor-in-chief of Accounting Historians Journal, Bill Black.
Again, thank you for the opportunity to be part of this. And this is a little bit unfair to Carmelo because the other editors on this panel have been doing this for quite a while. I feel like I'm one of the newest, and I started with Accounting Historians Journal since 2017. Carmelo's only been doing this year, and already he has surpassed my expectations as the insights that he brings to his reviews, the perspective, and comes up with all kinds of things. Carmelo and I met at a conference in Nantes a couple of years ago when he was presenting on an interesting paper, and that ended up turning into a collaboration and led to a couple of interesting things. When you look at the landscape of accounting history, there are really three leading publications, all English language publications. There are other journals as well that do sometimes offer accounting history articles, but there's really three. There's a Accounting History Review, there's Accounting History, there's Accounting Historian's Journal. Accounting Historian's Journal is the oldest one. We started back in 1974 publishing, but so we've been doing this for 50 years. But in some ways, it's also the newest one because in 2017, Accounting Historian's Journal, which is the publishing arm of the Academy of Accounting Historians, the Academy of Accounting Historians became part of the American Accounting Association, which is a 5,000 plus member organization, not just American accounting educators, but throughout the world. And we came over to become part of that. I benefited from that transition. Previous editor, you may know those little 3-inch by 5-inch cards. They call them index cards sometimes. Well, she was actually managing her process through index cards, through manual notations and all that. We've moved to technology by being part of the American Accounting Association umbrella. And then we moved to better technology. We still have a really poor system, but it's much better than what we had before. And what we have as a result of being part of the American Accounting Association is we have access to the resources there, and we've got a much better publication process. We publish 2 articles or 2 issues a year. The December issue of 2025, we actually bumped our quota up to 10 articles, and we're going to be able to do 10 articles an issue going forward, which is fairly major since we have had some issues with 5 or 6 articles in them. Trying to serve our membership, we are trying to put out a journal that is interesting to the people who read it. And so we keep that in mind. And that goes into our article selection and all that. We have our first special section, not a full special issue, coming out in June of next year. John Kaiser is now at the Arizona State University, is the guest editor on that, and it's a special section on research methodology. How do we go about conducting accounting history research? We've got a number of different articles in that, and one of them I'm pleased to see is represented on this panel, because you have to look at why do you want to do accounting history research. If you are just trying to do something to meet your institution's requirements for publication, there are many easier ways to do it. You can go out there and you can crunch a bunch of numbers. You can tag team with 6 or 7 other similarly oriented scholars. You can mass produce some tremendous mathematical methodology piece, and that will get accepted by some of the top journals and go out there. The distinction between the top journals and the other journals is, to my mind, the higher the prestige of the journal, the fewer people actually read it. They are up there. So at the very top, the only people who are reading those star journals are the ones who are either publishing in it or want to get into it by attacking what somebody else is publishing in it. At the level that I'm publishing at, we're B rated by the Australian Business Deans Council. We just got a boost in Italy to be an A-rated journal by the Italian Society. We've also been listed in Scopus as part of business history, not just as an accounting publication. So we're conscious of the ratings, but what we're trying to do is put out something that people actually want to read. Now, coming back to the research methodology piece, Karen and Christopher have hit on an important part of it, which is we're telling a story. We are talking about something that is interesting to us, and we expect that it will be interesting to the reader. And to do that, you have to do much more than do flashes of methodological brilliance. You don't have to do much more than just identifying a seemingly relevant theory from some other social science discipline and trying to adapt it. You have to actually investigate something, figure out what it means, and communicate that in a way that your readers can understand and appreciate. So Karen's and Christopher's article was on telling the golden thread, telling the story using narrative to get a message across, and that makes the article interesting. This is a presentation on getting published, and there's all kinds of aspects of that. We've got the three main accounting history journals. Looking at it, oh, they're hot competitors. We are not competitors. I had a conversation with the Carolins, and I'm not sure Laura was in on that at the Siena conference, but we are not competing. We're not trying to take things away from each other. We all have our own focus. Each journal has a style. There's a feeling about the journal that these are the things that the editors believe their readers would be interested in. And if you read the journals, they're all talking about accounting history, but they're all talking about it from different perspectives. Laura mentioned about desk rejections. I get a lot of very easy desk rejections because they send something in and it's pretty clear that it's been rejected by some of the other top journals. And then they say, oh, I've done this longitudinal study and I've gone through all this complicated analysis, and it got rejected by one of the A++ journals. But I've done a lot of work on it. So I'll just, oh, it's got 30 years of data on it. I'll send it to an accounting history publication. And I'll send it to Accounting Historians Journal because they don't have a submission fee. And I go through that and I read it. And one of the first things that I do as an editor is I turn to the back of the paper and I look through and say, how is this connected to the accounting history literature? And the ones that get desk rejected have no citations to accounting history, to accounting history review, to Accounting Historians Journal, or the accounting history publications that appear in some of the other leading journals. Because if it's not connected to our existing literature, unless it's an absolutely brilliant piece of work that is breathtaking in its scope, it really needs to go somewhere else. So the citations, of course, it strokes my ego when somebody cites one of my articles, but that's certainly not a requirement to get into our journal. And what I want to see is that whatever you are telling about, what story you're telling, is based on a knowledge of our existing accounting literature, accounting history literature, and then expand on that. Take it somewhere that it hasn't gone before, maybe, look at it, but also tell an interesting story. We have had some rejections. Someone submitted a very thoroughly researched story about a industrial company and how their accounting practices changed from the 1920s to the 1930s to the 1940s to the 70s and 80s. And it was well researched. But I read it, associate editors read it, sent it out to reviewers, and we all had the same impression. Okay, now that I've read this, what difference does it make? It's a compilation of historical facts. Okay, fine. But it wasn't put together in a way that had the impact. As Laura mentioned, how does this relate to the present? How does this relate to the future? Because history is more than just a dry recitation of facts. It is also accumulating those facts and presenting them in a way that provides insights, that helps people to have a better understanding of what they're doing now and what they are doing going forward, and what we should be doing. Now, it's okay to challenge accepted beliefs. Alan has been a leader in establishing those accepted beliefs and then challenging some of the common assumptions. And I had no idea that there was so much controversy about 1100s and 1200s until started following some of the stuff that Alan is doing on that. And yeah, he's got an understanding. He's got a set of data there that he has established a leading position on. I see Marina's in the conversation as well. There's all kinds of unexplored things out there from the 1100s coming forward, 1800s, 1900s, whatever. But coming back to why you're doing this, if you're just doing this to get a publication, there are easier ways to do it. And there's so much work involved in doing accounting history that you'd better be doing something that you're interested in. You'd better be doing something that you enjoy. Because for one thing, if you get into a vein of work that has a great deal of data there and a great deal of information to process, you're going to be doing several papers out of it. It takes so long to get your hands around the information that you better get some multiple returns out of it. But you're going to get rejected, or you're going to get critical comments coming back from the journals that you submitted to. And sometimes those critical comments are painful to get because people don't understand what you are trying to say. They don't get what your message is. Editors are not trying to, we are trying to accept everything that we possibly can that will suit the interests of our readers. But if you're not telling your story, if you're not getting it across, they will come back and they will tell you that this isn't working out. This isn't, you're not getting yourself. No. Generally, if you have a grounding in the accounting history literature and you're telling something that appears to be interesting, you will get a first round of reviews. Most of those first rounds of reviews will come back as improvements needed. We actually have more of our rejections on the second round than we do on the first round of reviews, because the reviewers will go out and they will suggest major revisions. Sometimes the authors do not accept those suggestions. Sometimes they disagree with them. Sometimes the suggestions are, inappropriate, but you have the opportunity in the review process to explain why you're telling the story the way you're telling it, to make some of your expositions clear or whatever. But if you're not responding to the review comments and the editorial comments in a way that looks like you're moving towards publication, you may get rejected after the second round. You make it past the second and third round. I think our record is 5, possibly 6 rounds of review. Those last 3 rounds of review on the paper that I'm thinking about were because the story itself was interesting and compelling, but the authors were not native speakers of English, and it was just hard for them to get their story out in a way that would be understandable. So we had a lot of language problems on that. But our process takes similar amount of time to Laura's journal. It'll take us a while to get the initial reaction. If you get a quick initial reaction, sometimes it's, oh, this is brilliant, this must be published immediately. At least I've heard of that. I have seldom experienced that, and but I am aware that some articles have been accepted in a week because they met a particular need and they were done well enough to meet the standards. But most of the time, it's going to take months till the feedback comes back. If you get it back quickly, that's probably a desk reject because it hasn't met the standards of the journal. I mentioned that we've got 3 different journals. You should be reading all of them. You should be getting a feel for the kind of articles that the editors are interested in. You should be trying to figure out what the read, because they all do different things. Most of our articles are by authors based in the United States. That's just an accident of location or whatever. But we are branching out. We are going to authors connections to India. We had Turkish authors. We had all over the place. Go to the article with I did with Carmelo about bibliometrics. You'll see that there's all kinds of representation. We are always interested in getting more people involved, giving people an opportunity to find out more about the world, find out more about a different location. But it comes back to, well, this is something that Gary Previtz doesn't claim authorship for, but I heard it from him, so I'm going to attribute it to him. The decision factors on getting an article published. Is it new? Is this just whatever has already been done, or does this have something to have something additional to offer, expanding our view of the universe? And it has to pass that novelty. There is a place for replication if you're doing methodology work, but in accounting history, most of what we're doing needs to be expanding our universe. So is it new? Next question. Is it true? Is it giving you a accurate analysis? Is this putting the facts together? Now you can be putting them together in a way that comes to different conclusion than the people before you have done. But you have to be able to support it. You have to be able to defend the insights that you've got, the methodological approach that you've used, the consideration, all of that stuff has to support whatever your conclusion is. Now you can violently disagree with somebody else's interpretation. You are all entitled to our own opinions, but we're not all entitled to our own facts. It has to be factually based, it has to be something that is representative of the analysis of that. But that's the second component of it. And the final part of it, and this is one that's really kind of hard for a lot of people with the traditional accounting perspective, which is, you know, a lot of people in accounting, a lot of people in history research are introverts. They say inwardly focused. They are looking at, well, this is interesting to me, so it must be interesting to everybody else. Well, the last qualification is it an interesting story? Is someone going to walk away from that saying, oh, that's something that I didn't know before, or that's interesting. I had no idea that this scholar that I learned from all about in my reading, I had no idea he was so poorly founded in his conclusions or whatever it was. It's got to tell the story in an interesting way. We have no restrictions on subject matter. We have no restrictions on location. We have no restrictions on methodology. But if you read our journal, you will see the kinds of things that previous editors and previous people doing it have said. This is an interesting contribution to the body of accounting literature. Okay. And the last part of it, the last piece of advice I'll end with it, something that I got from my doctoral committee. Dale Flesher was chair of my dissertation committee, and Dale is a very prolific writer. He has published hundreds and hundreds of articles, and when he is he's got a lot of collaborations going with scholars from all around the world. And when he is sending an article out, he knows where it's going. He is trying to fit that article to a particular journal. But not only does he know where he's sending that to, he knows what his backup is if that article doesn't make it through the review at the first journal it goes to. He has a plan for the second journal and the third journal. And if something comes back that requests revisions that he doesn't think his team can make, then he knows where to send it on. But he doesn't just sit around and they'll take a day to curse the faulty judgment of the editors or whatever, wherever it was sent, and then they'll turn it around and they'll send it somewhere else. Because if you've done a good bit of scholarship, if you've found something that is insightful, and you do the work to develop the story, you can get it published. Sometimes it's not going to go to the first journal. Sometimes it's not going to go to the second journal. And if what you've got is truly revolutionary, if it's truly expanding horizons, you may find rejection, but if it's interesting to you, if it's something that you care about, that you really want to get this baby published, keep plugging at it. But also keep in mind that the editors are not trying to reject your articles. They are trying to get articles published that are contributions to the accounting history literature. And so the suggestions that they make, while some of them may be painful for you to take into advisement, they are there to improve your work. And as a result of the editorial process, it's got any number of things you can criticize. You can criticize the amount of time. You can criticize the sending it to someone who may not be fully as much of an expert as you are in that particular area or whatever. But those are all trying to improve the work. And if you look at it as we are all trying to get better accounting history publications out there, then you appreciate it. And every once in a while, somebody comes back to you. Like I heard an author from an author the other day who said, "Oh, remember that paper of mine that you rejected 2 years ago? Well, it got published in this other place." And I congratulated on it. I said, "Thank you for letting me know that this got published. It was not a good fit for us for whatever reasons it were, but I appreciate and respect the work that you did. And I am glad you got some return on that because uh, these are your babies. These are things that you've invested a big chunk of your life in, and you need to get recognition for that. But you will get better recognition for that if you understand the arena that it's going into and you can accept honest and constructive criticism. Don't know how I'm doing on time, but I'm running out of voice, so I'll give it back to you, Karen.
Good morning, and I'm reaching out to you from Canada, and where it is currently 4 o'clock in the morning, if it's 9 o'clock in the UK. And I just have to admit that I don't function well at 3 to 4 a.m. So I'm hoping that I can give you a little bit of an overview of the journal in this way, and perhaps if it's helpful to you, you can reach out to me via email or even via Microsoft Teams or Zoom, and we can set up a time to chat about the journal at another time where it may be more mutually appropriate in terms of the hour. So I wish you a good event, and I want to thank Karen McBride for organizing it, and also to my colleagues from Accounting History and Accounting Historians Journal for being much more alert to the time zone than I was when I agreed initially to be part of this event, and hope that the event will go well and that I can give you a little bit of information about the journal that may help you to decide whether it is an outlet that is appropriate for your research. AHR, Accounting History Review, began its life in 1990 as Accounting, Business, and Financial History. It was renamed in 2011 to AHR, primarily to refocus it on accounting, but also the fact that we have sister journals at Taylor and Francis on business history and financial history. So this was trying to differentiate us from our sister journals. At this time, too, we've had 35 volumes of the journal. We publish 3 issues a year, and we have, I think, if you follow the journal, very selective, and I'd say less use of special issues that you may see in other journals. And also, we have, on the flip side, a very generous word count. We do not have a restriction on the word count. We judge content, not length. And so that allows us to publish fairly lengthy pieces. And if you go to our first issue of last year, 2025, you will notice that because we have an article by Rob Breyer, and that article runs about 50-ish pages or more. And so that's not your norm in many journals where you would allow an author that much time and to have something to say. So I think that does help sometimes when you have an article that may be needing that extra time to set up the storyline, to set up the context. You have room for that at AHR in terms of the fact that we have a fair bit of space for that. In terms of the journal, many of us have a long-standing connection with the journal, especially what had been the Cardiff Conference that began not shortly after the journal was established. And thankfully, we've been able to reestablish the Cardiff Conference, if not in Cardiff, initially at Edge Hill University over a number of years, and more recently in Italy as well, and finally coming up this year in June, our conference in Tokyo. In terms of the, I guess you'd say, the organizational setup of the journal, we have a pretty lean and mean setup in terms of one editor, that's me as editor, and then we have an editorial board of roughly 24 people who span the globe and span various disciplines. Some of them are not in accounting per se. They may be in management, they may be in finance, they may be in what you might call real history. But that is trying to represent the type of research that we get submitted to the journal, and so we don't have only people from, I guess you'd say, accounting per se. We have a very large group of ad hoc reviewers that bring expertise to the table for a specific submission. Those people very often are outside of accounting, even outside of management. And I think it's important to note that, because if you're going to submit a paper that deals with a particular historical period or context, a setting, it's not simply to talk to accounting, get the accounting straight, but it's very important that you realize that the people reading your paper, reviewing your paper, are likely to have domain expertise in that area. So this has come out quite recently with submissions, especially when authors who rely on other papers published in accounting history as the, I guess you'd say, the source for what would be, I would say, historiographical details, and reviewers somewhat question how an accounting history paper can be the go-to source for something that is very much of a historical research, very much grounded in a particular area of historical research, a particular context, and I guess you'd say not doing their homework to go back to the researchers who really did that type of research, either in economic history, finance history, business history, other social history, but the people who have studied these areas, and not to rely on other people's in accounting who may have published in a similar way. In terms of our submissions, the majority of our submissions come from Europe, especially Germany, France, and Italy. We can see also over time less dominance from the UK as these other areas have gained in attraction and gained in importance. We see very few submissions from the United States of America, but we see increasing interest from our colleagues in Africa, Asia, and South America. And with this, I think it's important to provide additional support to those authors, especially in emerging economies, who often do not have the resources or the network, the options to attend workshops or conferences. So really having those colleagues submit to try to help them, even if the paper eventually is rejected, to give them support in how to, I guess you'd say, become part of an accounting history research network, and where to go for help and support. In that vein, regardless of where your paper is from, the focus of the journal has always been on developmental reviews, trying to provide good feedback to authors regardless of their outcome on their paper. And if a paper does make it through the pipeline, that developmental review continues in terms of my own personal editor time, in terms of editing and coaching authors to try to make their paper the very best that it can be in terms of writing quality, not just following the style guide, but writing a readable paper and making sure that the paper hits the mark in terms of being well written and as opposed to just simply grammatically correct. And so that's important to us, and I think that that's something that I have learned as an editor, and also in other areas. I'm also department editor at the Journal of Ops Management, and that's very much the focus there in terms of trying to help authors move their paper forward regardless of where it ends up being published. I think it's also important to mention here, if you're thinking of submitting a paper, to spend some time reading the aims and scope of the journal. Not every journal has the same objectives, and I think it is important to kind of get that in your head when you're framing an article and how you want it to present it to the journal. I think that the journal has set itself apart to some extent by not talking about the history of accounting. You don't see a lot of articles about double entry bookkeeping, or maybe if it is, it's in a very novel way. but also how accounting is in history, how it is used in history. So I think that sets a tone, and I think also has been a change over time as the field has developed and has evolved in terms of topics of interest and topics that may have had a life cycle that are now ended, and new topics are emerging. Another thing that is important if you look at the aims and scope is that it's important to immerse yourself richly and deeply in the archives. However you interpret archives, whether it's digital, sitting in an archive, or basically, doing your homework. It is not a journal that likes to see work that it relies a lot on secondary sources, does not give a sense that you sat down and confronted the materials and provided your interpretation of those and your engagement with them. And so I think that's also reflects a sense that when we went through the era of critical accounting where the focus was on the archives were dead, this is trying to say no, the archives are very much part and parcel of the story, and they need to be present in your article in terms of having it, I think, meet the audience. The other thing we don't publish a lot of are what I would call state-of-the-art, state-of-the-discipline articles. You won't see many articles, if any, in the journal about what is accounting history up to this year, last year, next year. We really focus on the research studies and not research about the research. So that is something I think to bear in mind if you are planning one of those articles. There's probably other outlets that are more amenable to those types of articles than AHR would be. The important point for many people is how many papers get accepted into the journal. And if a journal article makes it through the desk rejection process, which is the majority of papers do not, then you will see that roughly 40% of the papers are rejected at the first round. That does not mean that if you make it through the first round, you've got automatic acceptance. Many papers are rejected after round one in a resubmission. What we do see is many papers go through a number of revision rounds, and even after that, many rounds between the editor and the author team to try to get the paper up to publishable high quality standard. We try to make quick decisions on the first submission, either a desk reject. Those are made within a few days. And finally, you will see that our overall rejection rate hovers around 80% or higher. So the number of papers that make it through the final steps is small. And those stats are all on our journal homepage. They differ a little bit because they factor in papers in a different way than I do from using my own stats from Scholar One in our journal portal. They include also in the count things like editorials in our annual bibliography, which really aren't submissions. So sometimes that has an impact on the final result. In terms of our news, what's going on at the journal, what's been published in the journal lately, I think one of the easiest ways is to follow the journal webpage, or also to follow us on LinkedIn. If you follow us on LinkedIn, you will be up to date on what's happening, what's been published, what events are coming up. So that may be a good place to start if you're not overly familiar with the journal, and also it provides you with lots of contact information. So to talk about perhaps some events coming up in the not too distant future, we have an event in April, the day after the end of the BAFA conference. It'll be held at Birmingham Business School, being hosted by the accounting department. And that event is a special festschrift in honor of our colleague, Professor Richard McVeigh. And we have a goodly number of colleagues who are going to present their research at that conference, either a paper that has been inspired by or relates to Richard's work, or perhaps not at all, but they have, as a researcher, been inspired by Richard. And the event itself will be at no cost. You will have to register to be there, so we know the numbers, especially for things like tea breaks, etc. But we're hoping that having it after BAFA may help some people in the UK who will be attending the BAFA conference, and then will be able to join us on the Friday, the 17th of April. And so if you're attending BAFA, please check us out, and the information for that event is on our LinkedIn page. The other event is in June, AHR Tokyo, which will be held in conjunction with and in collaboration with Meiji Gakuin University and Tokyo Metropolitan University. And it is rapidly closing in terms of the submission date for paper. It's actually in a couple of days. So if you are thinking of joining us in Tokyo, the submission date is the 15th of January, so that we can get out decisions to people in goodly time to make a decision to travel to Tokyo. But we're hoping to see many people there, and I know from the feedback that we've been given so far, we've had a goodly response, and I think it's a nice opportunity for us to go to Asia, as opposed to always expecting our Asian colleagues to come to Europe or North America. And again, the update on that is on our LinkedIn page, and also HR Tokyo. If you put HR Tokyo 2026 into Google, you should land almost immediately on the homepage for the conference. So again, I want to thank everybody for the opportunity to chat a little bit, at least via video, with you today. And also hoping maybe I will see many of you at BAFA in April. I'm taking advantage of being there for our own event to be able to spend some time at Aston to attend BAFA. It's not often that it's possible, given that those dates usually coincide with tight teaching dates at my own university. And also we don't have the equivalent of kind of an Easter break period. So I'm looking forward to being in Birmingham for that week, attending BAFA, and hopefully seeing some of you, if not many of you, at our event at Birmingham Business School. So thank you, and if you have any questions about the journal, about how processes, what topics are of interest, not of interest, etc., I would encourage you just to send me a quick email, and we can set up to chat, or we can converse via email, and hopefully that will help you out with some of those questions that you may wish to ask. And even if you don't, that don't get answered today, I'm sure that many of the questions, that the answers that you will receive from my colleagues from the other journals will probably be quite similar in terms that we're all trying to publish high quality, high impact work. And so their recommendations and their suggestions will probably be as useful, if not more useful, than mine would be. So thanks, and have a good day.
Thank you very much to Professor Cheryl McWaters, who is editor of Accounting History Review, for that recording.
You are muted.